So, setting priorities in a changing world. 5 areas to consider. Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how they apply to our virtual and changing world. Looking at academic standards, making them relevant, creating the environment, the power we hold, taking care of self, cultural diversity in a new world. No two journeys are the same. Within each of these areas, I will be discussing both the parents' and teachers' perspective and role. So we have a unique opportunity to recreate our education system right now. And if you take a look at this picture, maybe there are some things that we could consider as dinosaurs, things that maybe are okay if they go extinct in our education system. But maybe there's also an oasis. Maybe there are elements within our education system that we find to be renewing and healthy, and that we could recreate in a new way that will benefit future generations. Education plays a unique role in that we try to prepare for what might be coming, but we don't know in full what people will need to know for the future. So when we look at our young children, we're teaching them what we feel might be relevant for right now, but also with the hope of what might be coming up. So let's take a look at some things to consider as we explore our opportunities for recreating education. So who am I? My name is Nita Santiago Horstman. My husband and I have 2 young boys, 3 and 1. I have a master's degree in early childhood special education from Syracuse University and a bachelor's in elementary and special education from Millersville University. I've taught early childhood through high school, emotional support and life skills. I'm currently teaching from home with IU13. And if you take a look at some of my pictures, this is reality right now. I think this one picture actually was from a meeting I had. I have 2 young kids, so we're trying to balance out everything. And my garden is my oasis right now. And we'll talk a little bit more later about some things that we are going to want to consider when we're trying to balance out our lives and our education, either of teaching or our own children and potentially teaching our own children. So Maslow hierarchy of needs and how they apply to a virtual and changing world. Here's an illustration of one. And Maslow's hierarchy has 5 key components. And there's the basic needs with safety and physiology, so food, water, shelter. And then you get into the more psychological needs, so your self-esteem, a sense of belonging. And then finally, ideally, you get to a self-fulfillment needs. This is your self-actualization, a feeling of completion and success. And within all of this, it's not linear. You are going to go up and down it throughout your life based on what's going on. And maybe right now, this is something more of what it feels like. You may have been at the top and all of a sudden your world was thrown upside down because of a changing world and environment. And so now you might feel like you're more in your safety zone. You might be on survival mode, which is down at your basic needs. Maybe you're back down in the middle, or by chance, everything that's been going up and down has actually put you in a sense of self-actualization. You feel a sense of purpose and you feel that you're aiming towards more of your goals and able to understand better. So no one's going to meet at the same place. But these things are very important when we look at education. So how do these apply to a virtual and changing world? Okay, as a teacher, these are your needs and not wants to remember for all of us. And things that we're thinking about as a teacher would be, are my students safe? Are they healthy? Are they getting food and protection? Psychological needs, are they mentally development of students? Are they emotionally safe? Too much screens? Are they having social skills, self-value? What are they going through right now? Do they understand? How could I even help my students through all of these things? And then self-fulfillment needs. Are they developing self-awareness and motivation and empowerment? Do they feel a sense of exploration on all the things that they could be doing? which sometimes we will consider an education setting, a school, to provide some of that support and structure and meet a lot of these needs. As teachers, we go into it ideally for a passion and care of the students and our future generations and wanting to help them explore and our own enjoyment for learning and wanting others to enjoy it as well. As a parent, listen, if my kid has food, they're sleeping, and they're safe, we're good. Okay, I have 2 kids. I get it. Kids in my sanity, not when we're all at home all day long. That doesn't work so easy. There's work demands, there's a teacher's demands, there's kids' demands, there's the news and media, and all of that's filling my psychological awareness of things. And it's sometimes really scary or unnerving or exhausting. I've had days where 10:30 in the morning, I'm exhausted and done. Um, and finally, my self-fulfillment needs. Once my kids are asleep, maybe I can do my work, or maybe I'm going to compromise some of my values. Kids watch something while mommy works. Okay, because we're trying to balance out all of that and still having that conflict of, but my kids are my world, they're important to me, and then but I have my work, or maybe I'm working, maybe I am just a stay-at-home parent, but I still have house demands and a feeling of keeping the house clean and in order, and it's challenging. um Maslow's hierarchy needs and how they apply in a virtual and changing world, looking at what are some of the questions and things we can analyze in those areas. As a teacher, I'm going to look at how can I or the school meet these needs for students or better empower parents. So now we're looking at a new school year coming. What's that going to look like? And how do we want to use it? As a teacher, I don't get all the say. A lot of the districts and states will make those decisions for themselves. Other countries will make their own decisions. And as a teacher, I have to decide, am I going to take it as an opportunity to help, or am I going to stay very rigid in how things are done? I hope you'll take it as an opportunity to look at things and question what you might be able to do, and how can we make parents feel more comfortable with having their kids learning in a unique and different settings, however that might be. Schools have been doing pretty well trying to do provide food in the US to families and still provide those meals and check-ins with parents. Um, but it is very uniquely different. Psychological needs, teaching skills that matter now and a possible future. List what need seems critical with basics in mind. So if we look at hierarchy of needs from Maslow, we're looking at, food, shelter, and water and safety, all those things that you feel are really important at the base for us to psychologically be able to even learn anything. If those aren't being met, no amount of learning is going to get there, academic or otherwise, unless that learning directly relates to those basic needs and we feel a child or an adult feels that it's going to benefit them in being able to meet those basic needs that they need first and foremost. So I encourage teachers and parents to make a list. What is it you think is absolutely critical to know? What do you really need to be able to do to function in society, in this world? What are critical skills? And see how that can incorporate into your curriculum, into the things you're teaching. Self-fulfillment needs. Am I providing discussion? Am I doing unique exploratory skills, materials that really matter and are diverse? Trying to incorporate other topics to really grab students' interest and encourage them to be who they are at the highest level possible. I'm going to go into the parents now, and I want you to keep in mind some of this stuff's also going to relate over to the teacher, because whether you have kids or not, you also want to keep in mind things that need to help yourself. So as a parent, I'm going to do my best, but I need to know when to ask for help and who to ask. Again, teachers, you have a really cool place now that you can help parents realize, oh, this is who you ask, or this is where we go for this information. Be willing to ask for help. Well, as a teacher too, ask the administration, ask colleagues, what are you doing for this? How are you working on this situation? Know when to take a break and ask for help. So when you're getting to that psychological point where you're just like, oh my word, I can't go anymore. It's okay. All right. There are going to be great days and there's going to be some days that you just need to breathe. And you all take a break. You do a reset. If it means everybody go back to bed, we're going to start this day over again. So be it. We find ways to cope and find a new balance. Give yourself, your kids, your teachers, everybody some grace. Okay? Grant yourself grace. Set a realistic priorities for yourself and your kids. And not everything is going to be done perfectly. Not everything's easy. And you may not have access to all the information that every may have. So, it might feel a little more like this. And you might need to take that moment because as a parent, let me tell you, it sometimes is 2 seconds in the bathroom and you're still being interrupted that you need to breathe. In a new classroom, whether it's in a classroom as was or a hybrid or virtual education, and our students and families won't be the same, okay? It doesn't matter where we're at. The world has changed and shifted drastically, and it's still on a really crazy roller coaster ride of ups and downs, and we don't know which way it's going. So that comes with a lot of emotional stuff. There's going to be fears, both from staff, coworkers, colleagues, to your families and the children who are entering it. Honestly, the idea sometimes of going in and out of my own home and knowing I have to be more cautious around my parents or children, it's a little scary sometimes, but it's going to be okay. And I found, discussing with my spouse, with other parents and families, it really helps to talk about it, to then problem solve what can we do and how can we make this comfortable and getting used to whatever that looks like. You're going to grieve because all of a sudden everything that you've known has changed. And you're going to go through those grieving processes just like somebody died. So research a little bit of what that might look like for yourself, but also your students. You're going to see new behaviors from children that we never thought before. And there's going to be a lot of times that you may think, oh my goodness, this child needs special education, or this child needs this kind of help, or oh, will they just put them on medication? No, it's not okay to put them on meds, right? But I understand where that feeling is going to come from, okay? So for teachers and parents, take a step back, definitely check in with your special education team and others and reach out to your school districts to help you figure out and problem solve stuff. It might be just a simple awareness or some counseling, but you're going to see more behaviors from children that you've not noticed in that child before because of the differences that they are being expected to do, as well as the environment changing. You may notice more sensory needs, lights. Oh my goodness, all the things I could talk to you about in sensory stuff that go on that we don't even realize. The sound of fluorescent lights. Yeah, they make a sound. The color and the environment. Please, less is more. Okay, like don't have a lot of background stuff. Don't try to fill your home or your classroom with a whole bunch of stuff. And if possible, if you're at home, try to find a safe space that you teach your child. This is where you go when you need to calm down. We'll talk a little more about that another time. But it does help a lot. And then attention. Your kids have been off from school for, I can't even imagine. Each state has been different. Each country has been different. But we're going on a good long amount of time where they've been doing things at home. And so, or a daycare or other setting that just makes things different. And the focus is going to be much shorter, maybe longer. It depends on the child, but it will be very different. And then the comprehension, the ability to absorb information, like I said before, is going to be different because you have all those other emotions, all those other things going on. I also highly encourage you to talk about emotions with your students. Focus a good amount of time each day on identifying emotions, on working through some of those, and we can talk more at another time about that as well. You can always reach out to me for more information. So let's look at academic standards. As a teacher, this is where we start. This is first and foremost. This is what a state or a country will say are expectations for a student to meet success in that grade and then move on to the next grade. And every place is going to be different about how well they do in each of these, how many of them they're successful at. But this is our foundation. This is like, the foundation of a home. Okay, if we don't have an understanding, a unified idea of what that should look like, then you've got some people putting a foundation that's starting up here and somebody dug too deep down here, and you're going to have everything breaking apart. So we really do want to try to have something stable. That's the goal. I pulled one of the Common Core standards from the US. Not every state uses this, but this was an idea that was based on lots of educated individuals in each of these fields analyzing standards and saying what they felt were very important, and then educators, and it was this big team and process. Okay, here's the tricky thing, and I want people to understand. A lot of people hate standards, like truly hate them. And the reason is that they are basing their beliefs and understandings on the standards on a curriculum. And curriculums tend to put everything in these little boxes and say, this is what it should look like. We're intelligent, creative people. We're going to need to look outside the box. This is when we're going to step away from all this, and we've got to look straight at the standards. So, pulled one from 3rd grade, and it's about measuring and estimate liquid volumes and masses of objects using standard units. So cups, pints, quarts. Oh my goodness, I love this goal. Okay, because I can hit this goal from my little kids and toddlers all the way through high school, and it still be interesting and fun to do. So how can you take this standard, think through it, make it matter to parents, to kids when they are at home? How can you make it that they aren't looking at a screen all day, okay, and they're developing social skills? Their feeling of value is also met within just this one standard. So I encourage you right now, take a pause from this and think about it. Really put some time into this one. Think, how as a parent or a teacher could you make this very exciting standard in math stand out? Some standards are going to be easier to do. Some standards are not. Some standards you can combine with other standards, make a unit study together, and incorporate all the subjects all at once. And you've just met the standards. Okay, you can still check them off your list. Okay, I'm going to give you a hint on what I think would really work well, and I do know works well because I've done it lots of times. And it's cooking or baking anything they choose. No two families are going to have the same stuff in their home. So incorporate, allow them to measure out and explain a recipe that's either from their culture, from their home. Listen, I don't care if it's making mac and cheese from a box. If they measure out the ingredients they used and they can explain to you how they mix things together, if a parent can send you a video of them working on it together, they met the standard, right? They're working towards that. And all of a sudden, basic needs of needing food are met. How you do that on your own together as a family brings self-value. You've got social skills going on right there because you need to work together. And then that sense of value. You just made memories, and you just said that whatever you make at home is okay. your food is good, your experience is worth knowing about. And that's one standard. Okay, so imagine all the possibilities we have when we look at our state standards. Now, every place, again, is going to have their own. Each country has their own. Search, look online, contact your districts to find out what those are. Teachers, you better know them, and work through them. And look through them before school starts. It does help a lot to plan out. So creating the environment. What can I control in the environment? All right, so I mentioned this a little bit before with the sensory step, but consider your lighting, your walls, seating, the temperature, the colors you're using, the textures, the sounds. My body language and tone of voice matter. My mood. Be honest, there's days you're not going to be at your top game. It's okay. We just need to be honest and consider those things with both our students and our families and our homes, however working things out, wherever we're working from. Nutrition. You're going to have students or your own child who has just gone from either eating all the time whenever they choose to because they have the home food at home, or they didn't have enough food at home. And so they have had some lack of nutrition, or they've been only eating snacky foods and they haven't been eating as healthy. I have noticed, at least in my area, junk food's not going off the shelf so much. There's a lot of healthier things, which is great. It means maybe we're noticing that what we eat matters. I encourage you to provide midday a healthy snack. If possible, with permission, find ways of providing healthy snacks just to help the kids mentally get over those humps and mentally connect and focus in. And then our expectations, our routines and schedules, and our transitions, keeping culture in mind. There's a lot we can talk about in these areas as well that impact a child's awareness. They have been with their families, which I hope is a wonderful thing for most, for a long time right now, which for some of my kids have been great. They have bloomed and expressed themselves so much better because they've had more quality time with their families. Others, it's been more stressful and it's more harder to do at least the virtual aspects of learning. And then preparation and organization with whole body, learning styles, and needs in mind. So like I had mentioned for the topic on math, find ways that incorporate more movement, more learning, more experiences that really do matter to who they are and what they may do in the future. And then my own flexibility. So as a teacher, as a parent, we're going to have to be a little more fluid, and it's not easy. Oh my goodness, there are days when I'm like, no, I want it like this. This is just what needs to happen. And it's hard to take a step back sometimes and be like, no, my kid's having a hard time. I got to change. I got to do something different. Even if this was the plan I had for the day, I got to mix it up. And that, we need to learn to do that. It's not always easy. Our routines and schedules, I really, really, really encourage people to make those with what is expected in kids, so they know ahead of time, all right, this is what we're doing today, this is what it looks like, but don't put time frame. If you can help it, yes, there's certain things that you have to be in certain places at a certain time, but if you can make it more fluid where you're like, okay, we're going to spend some time doing, playing at centers, and then I'm going to put on a timer, and I'm going to give you a 5-minute warning. Make sure we give our kids those warnings, those notifications that, hey guys, in 5 minutes I'm going to ask you to clean up. We're going to move on to our next task. We have this really exciting next thing we're doing. Really helps our kids be fluid with moving through things. But having a little more flexibility in that helps as well. All right, virtually. Simple background. Hopefully this is simple enough and behind me if you can see me. Clear expectations that are reasonable. Not everyone has crayons or Play-Doh. Okay, so be very flexible in what you're requesting of your families to do as a teacher if you're doing virtual. Clear directions with videos are so helpful. I can't tell you how many parents have been so frustrated and told me they can't stand the stuff that they're getting information um, and this is from friends and other people I've talked to, who've said the teacher's giving us these long, wordy discussions because they're used to doing it that way. And there's no clear, I can't follow it. I don't know how my kid's supposed to follow it. So we need to keep our directions very clear, very simple, and small steps at a time if possible. Being flexible again. And then routines that can flow easily between home and school. So if you're doing a hybrid where you are at school for some days, some of the time you're doing stuff virtually, and then there's that intermixed stuff, or we don't know, is school going to close around here? We just got notified that they're closing, doing virtual this year. But they had said they were opening. And so we're going through this very back and forth. Nobody really knows what's happening. And it's okay. It's not great. We don't love it, but we're going to adjust. We're going to find a way to make this successful and enjoyable for everybody. But we really need to look at our routines so that somehow we can bring a unity to help give our students more support, our kids more support and comfort in this process. They really do feed off our own energy. If we are really anxious and stressed about it, our kids are going to be stressed and anxious about it. Parents, where kids sit really helps. If they can be at some sort of table, some sort of designated clean space where they don't have a lot of distractions, really helps. Sleep, making sure they have that routine of this is when I go to bed, this is when I get up, this is when I'm doing my schoolwork, helps keep some level of calm and expectation of what happens without the stress of what's happening next. I don't know what's happening next. Do I get to watch my cartoon show that I always watched at 10 o'clock in the morning? Is mom going to do I have to go do math with my teacher online at 10 in the morning? So making sure that if whatever hours the school's setting up for virtual stuff, or you as a parent are homeschooling and deciding to do stuff with your kid, make sure it's routine schedules so that there's not a expectation and disappointments and frustrations. It will lessen the behaviors. And then clear expectations again and reinforcers. So sometimes when we're doing virtual, we encourage parents also to have like some sort of reward, something expected after. Okay, so reminding your child ahead of time, saying, okay, once you're done and you've focused and done your schoolwork, then you can play with bubbles. You can have an extra show time. You can, we can get out that game you really like and we'll play, a few minutes of it together. You can have that special snack you really wanted. Remember, I saved it in the cupboard for you. Don't worry, it's still there. After you're done, you can have it. So just some reinforcers, some encouragement to make the process more enjoyable, especially for little kids. All right. So self-care. Yeah, not so easy when you're a parent, juggling full-time job and your home and your kids. Even if you don't have the job in there to add to it, you still have just kids to take care of and a family and home, and everybody's at home all the time. It's hard. It really is. Feels like this. So self-care. This is where I would have put this one first, because unless we do it, unless we take that time for ourselves, there is no way any of the other stuff is successful. Remember the basic needs? Yeah, that's where we're at. When we don't take care of ourselves, we run ourselves thin. And I can't tell you how many times I've done this to myself. I still struggle with this one. So be aware of yourself. All those things that we're thinking about, we need to take a mental break, take some moments to breathe. We have our mental well-being, we have our physical, so our motor, our diet, our sleep, our bodily functions, and our hygiene. They all really, really do matter. We don't always take those into account when we're thinking about self-care. Usually we kind of get hooked on, if I do this, like I love gardening right now. That's my sanity. But it doesn't meet every area of self-care. And so I need to make sure I'm checking off that list in my head of like, okay, what can I do? Having fun, finding new things that are fun. Our social is very different right now, but finding ways for that as well. Be it a virtual, be it that you're agreeing that, okay, you're only seeing this limited number of people. We've kind of been a little more flexible in the sense of, okay, we'll see this group of people for this week, and then we're going to give a week or two off before we see the next, batch of family or whoever, and just making sure we're being as safe and listening to advice as best we can. Our spiritual and emotional well-being, um, and that kind of goes into the mental in some ways, but it is a different sense of calm and connection to the world and yourself. Meditation is a great one for that. Include your kids and students in this. It doesn't have to be, oh, this is just me time. I'm not going to see anybody else. This is all about me. No, I bring my kids and I do yoga together in the mornings. And they do it with me. We're both taking that time to relax. And it looks silly, it looks funny. Sometimes it's a dance party. We're stressed out. Let's just put music on and, be silly around the house. Get outside and exercise as much as possible. Grant yourself grace. Okay. Some days are great, some days aren't. And it's a flexible process. So be kind to yourself and others. Realize that we're all in a different place for our self-care. Make sure you're taking vitamins. Know when to ask for help. We don't all like constant change. A lot of us don't. So find a way to set new normals. Timers really help. Music helps. Schedules that are not bound by time. I mentioned that before. Having means of like meditating and sleep, making sure we're taking a lot of water in. I personally like none. It's a added flavor to water that doesn't have any added sugars or things. It's electrolyte drink. So you're finding things that are good for your hydration is really important. Eating healthy and finding mental breaks. We've found, and there's research to prove it, that if you take even just 2 minutes where you're just breathing, literally maybe closing your eyes, taking some deep breaths, relaxing, not allowing yourself to think about everything. But if a thought comes in your mind, let it pass through. Don't hold on to it and refocus on your breathing. Taking very calm breaths in and out and focus on that breathing for 2 minutes, even, goodness, 2 seconds, can really make the difference between losing your mind with your kids and able to function and calmly discuss a problem. Get dressed. I don't care. If you've got some nice looking clothes in the closet and you're just going to be at home, still put them on. Like, hello, yeah, enjoy your life and find things to do that make you feel good. Make sure you're using the bathroom, guys. I can't explain this one. Okay, this is really strange, but as teachers, we tend to have this concept that we really have to hold it the entire time. And to some extent we do. We're not using the bathroom all that often because we have to watch the students. There might not be extra support in the room. It might be hard to get someone in our room so that we could have a bathroom break. That's really not healthy. Okay. But that's where things are at sometimes. So as much as possible, please, it does make a world of difference in your health, in your blood sugar, everything, guys. It really does matter. Time for self and time with friends, if it's virtual, if it's on a phone call, if it's writing a letter. Only because we don't do that much anymore. But please go ahead and write a letter to somebody. Let them know what you're thinking about, how you're feeling, what's going on. Find new or old interests. Sometimes there's things we did as kids, we forgot about them until either we had kids or we ended up in a situation like this where we're forced to stop and think, oh, what does matter to me and how can I make my life different? Emotional awareness. Realize that you're going to grieve. There's a good chance that we're all going to go through some level of that in different ways. And the other big emotions. So I tell my kids, Mama's having a big emotion right now, big feelings, or they are. It looks like, whew, guys, it looks like you're having a big emotion right now. Yeah, it feels really overwhelming. And any feeling can be that way, from being super happy and excited to being really sad or really angry or really scared. And those are just a couple names of a lot of feelings that exist. Each country, each language, each culture will use different words to explain different feelings that they have a general idea of what that looks like per se. And I personally really love zones of regulation. I use it with my kids. Look it up. That's great to explain some of those feelings, especially for your younger kids. But I've used it for middle school and high school kids too. It's been used in a lot of different groups. And it helps just identify some of those feelings and be able to put words to how you feel. And then problem solving. What can you do to help maneuver those feelings? What can we do to bring all of it down to a more even keel and able to cope with it? You know, each feeling tells us something about ourselves and what's going on, and they're all okay. There's not one emotion that's bad, okay? None of them are bad. They all have different reactions. It depends on how we react, our action or what we do that matters. Again, we can talk a lot about that one. Cultural diversity, guys. Oh my goodness, we've gotten into a wonderful place where we're like all of a sudden talking about this more. And there are people making it more awareness of, hey, maybe we're really not giving everyone an even, or not even, it's the word, a fair placement in the world. So fair is not equal, but it does mean that everyone has same opportunities and everyone has that chance to get to the finish line. Lots of videos, lots of conversations that we can have around this one. It doesn't matter what your viewpoint is on it, on what's going on in the world or not, in the sense of when we are educating and when we are working with our own kids or with a classroom, it matters. We are all different. There's no denying that. And our diversity is there, be it you look as white as I do, or you look very, dark skinned, or more olive skin complexion, or oh my gosh, the colors is beautiful. It's like a rainbow. There's so the skin tone doesn't even really matter, people. I mean, it does in the way people treat them, everybody. But when it comes to that cultural diversity, no two are always the same. Point being, varieties in literature can be an impact. So I come from a mixed background where my Hispanic culture, books or literacy is critical, very important to my family. But a lot of it was also oral storytelling. And it wasn't so much sitting down together to read a book together. It was more telling each other stories or what we had been reading about and having conversations. So, but that was my family's cultural background. That's my Puerto Rican background. That doesn't, or my Anglo, like Scots Irish background or whatever that my mix is. You know, my Jewish, any, oh my gosh, I have so many backgrounds, ethnic background groups. That's my background experience, but that's not necessarily my siblings' experience. That's what I remember. That's how I interpreted my family upbringing and my culture around me and who I became. But unless I sit down and have that cultural conversation with my siblings, they may have had it differently because we lived in different places at the time. Our family dynamics changed. Our, experience were different. The same goes then for being understanding that from group to group. I may have more of a cultural connection and understanding of a friend who has a darker skin complexion because of how I was raised versus another friend who might look more physically like me, but then has different background. They've, maybe came from having a lot of money or living in a different part of the country that just culturally is different. It impacts. We can't judge by the way somebody looks. So when we're looking at how we're dealing with cultural diversity in our hybrid virtual classroom settings, whatever it is, and even in our own homes, we need to be aware of invading each other's privacy on both ends. I'm letting you into my world where I'm sitting and living. You're letting me into your world and where you're living and setting in a virtual setting. Also in the classroom, that can kind of happen in many ways now because we're doing so much more conversations. There's a lot more going on, which is great. It really is good. Being respectful, asking questions and listen. So I might not understand every student family's cultural background, what they value. Maybe time is a very fluid thing. Maybe there isn't really a sense of like, oh yes, we have to be up at this time and we have to be at this. Maybe it means, hey, I'm going to be there this evening. It could be 8, 9 o'clock at night, or it could mean I'll be there around 7, but it's at some point in the evening. And that's okay. So asking questions and listening, and it's not wrong to ask questions as long as we're doing it with respect and a desire to learn. So that means parents can ask teachers, teachers ask parents, and being willing to share and respect when people don't want to share. We already talked about that one. So education system doesn't make sense to everyone, by the way. Either they've had a bad experience in the education system growing up, they really don't care about it, or all those little details on lesson planning and who has lunch when and why is my student learning to do math this way? Listen, if you can do the math problem correctly, it doesn't really matter. Let's not get so hung up on this is how things have to be done, as long as parents are able to prepare their child to understand how to do a math problem, how to work through those different systems. That's what matters, okay? Willing to embrace various world and cultural views on education, okay? So we kind of looked at that dinosaur in the back, remember? At the beginning, let's take this opportunity too, when we're analyzing our cultural diversities and all that, to think, do we do our system? Is our way of teaching, in my case, we're in the Western culture, but it could be anywhere else. Is it the best method? Are there other options? Do they all have equally good concepts? And asking, we have such a rich diversity of people and internet and communication means that we can find out other ways and ideas. Who wrote the books? Okay, do your research. Where's your curriculum coming from? Where's your materials coming from? Is it coming from predominantly a white, higher, more affluent cultural background? Because it will have a different view on how things happened in history. It will paint a different picture than, say, someone else's perspective on it. Does one negate the other? Sometimes. But a lot of times, if we put all those stories together, we get a better picture on where people were coming from. Not saying it's right at all, not saying, but we get to understand each other better. We get to have those dialogues. But there are books, there are things that you say, no, we need to choose a different curriculum. We need to have a richer conversation. Again, here's a really cool thing. Give students a voice. If you find that your school's curriculum or what you're given to use to teach your kids is minimal in what it provides and the history and the language, and I'm serious, this includes math, this is in music, in history, in science, each of those subjects had individuals from all backgrounds, who truly contributed and made it rich and made it what we have today. So if you give your students more researchability or more encouragement to talk about and listen to, interviewing their parents, say what was their education system like? What did they learn when they were kids? What was different in the world today? Ask their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles. Allow the students to have more dialogue with you in that. That's your older kids. If you're looking at your younger kids, yes, still have those conversations, but it can be a little more tricky. Literacy, like storybooks, picture books, amazing. There are a ton from every walk of life, from individuals from different ethnic, religious, cultural, socioeconomic, sexual life backgrounds. Like you name it, it's there. You just have to look for it. And find those stories to include, to have conversations. Listen, you can read a story and not have a conversation about it if that's what you need to do, but it still gives everybody an exposure and an ability to analyze, to question, and to embrace our rich diversity and say, we're beautiful. Humanity is beautiful. So be brave enough to question and challenge the norms in all that we're doing. Action expresses priorities, Gandhi said. So what we decide in our education system to be our oasis are essential things to keep, and what we allow to die, to go extinct, tells the world, tells each other what we value, what we think is a priority in our society. So when we're going through that process, make sure that at the heart of all of it, for ourselves, for our teachers, for our children, so as parents, make sure the kids are the priority. You know, that what we're creating, what we're putting together will truly uplift them and encourage them and give them a sense of hope for what their future can be when they work together towards a better end and a better goal. I hope you all have a great and wonderful school year. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. My email is ask.5min.t@gmail.com. And remember to keep in mind Maslow's hierarchy of needs in a changing world, virtual and changing world, and looking at academic standards, making them relevant, creating the environment to be aware of the power we hold in that environment setting, taking care of ourselves first and foremost, and then incorporating our cultural diversity and the world that we have. We embrace it with joy and fulfillment. All right.